Chapter 53. The mountain path to Tongxing Brigade was steep, winding, and dangerous. As I left Luo village, I heard the deep, distant growl of the tiger in his cage, in the mist far below. I was surprised. I thought the villagers had killed him by now, but he was still there, pacing and snarling and clawing incessantly at the bars of his prison. I turned to look in the direction of Yiping's village many times, but it was soon lost in the morning mist. The road narrowed and wound along a deep precipice. The farther I climbed, the less dense were the bamboo and trees. The birds were singing. There was an ancient roadside resting place with a small pavilion. It had deteriorated badly, but there was a stone bench to sit on. Past travelers had etched their names and thoughts on the stone. I read some of the names and the brief poems. Most appeared to have been carved by red guards making their way up or down the trail, praising Chairman Mao for giving them strength, giving meaning to their lives, giving them life itself. As I climbed, I kept looking for Tongxing village. Eventually, I spotted a solitary structure in the distance on a terraced plateau. Several dozen children were playing around the building. This must be the school, I said to myself. But where is the village? A river descended on the steep grade next to the plateau that separated the mountain path and the school. A single log, less than a foot in diameter, had been dropped across the river to serve as a bridge. I was hesitant to cross. I stood at one end of the log and looked down at the water rushing past. The water was clean and clear, and I could see the rocks and pebbles at the bottom of the river. I put down my luggage. The children on the far side of the bridge saw me. They shouted happily and ran to stand on the opposite side of the bridge. A young woman, a schoolteacher, I thought, joined them. "Come on," they shouted. "It's easy." Still, I waited. Two boys nimbly ran across the log to me. They picked up my belongings. "Are you the new teacher?" one asked. I nodded. "Come on," he called. "Don't be afraid." The children ran back across the log. All of the children began laughing at my fear and encouraged me to cross. The teacher called, "It's easy, really. Just don't look down." I stared at the log and tried not to see the rocks and rushing water below. The drop was about 10 feet. I turned sideways and began inching my way across. The girl approached me once I was safe on the other side. "You're the new teacher?" she asked. "I am." "We've been waiting for you," I was told you were coming. I am 向东梅. I am 巫一毛. We went inside the school, followed by the boisterous crowd of children. Dongmei showed me the layout of the structure. It was divided into 4 rooms. There were 2 classrooms, a kitchen, and a bedroom office for the teachers. Dongmei asked me about my schooling and my life in Luo village. She wanted to know if I was aware of the dangers of life in the mountains. I told her I was. Did they tell you why there is a vacancy here? She asked. No. No one told me anything. Until 4 weeks ago, there was another educated youth from Shanghai teaching here with me. One evening, after the children returned to their villages, she went for a walk along the stream, not far from here. She was bitten on the finger by a bamboo leaf viper. She screamed, and fortunately a peasant was nearby chopping down bamboo. He hurried to her, and she told him what had happened. She described the snake. The man told her to close her eyes and hold out her hand. He pressed her hand to a rock and chopped off the bitten finger with his hatchet. He wrapped her bleeding hand in his shirt and carried her back here. A group of peasants took her down the mountain to the county hospital. She recovered there and was allowed to return to Shanghai because of her disability. I cringed as she told me the story. If I had been bitten, she sighed, they never would have sent me home. I have the bad family background. The only way I'll ever leave this place is if I die. Me too, I said. Black family? Yes. She pointed to an empty bed against the wall and said, that was hers. Now it's yours. Welcome to Tongxing School. As I unpacked, she briefed me on the lessons for the children. They were divided into 2 classrooms. Grades 1, 2, and 3 were in one room, and 4, 5, and 6 in the other. She said she would be teaching political studies and math, and I would be teaching Chinese and music. In the morning, she taught the higher grades, and I taught the lower grades. In the afternoon, we switched. That evening, and for many evenings after, Dongmei and I talked late into the night. We soon got along like sisters. Dongmei was 19 and from Shanghai. We were about the same height and weight and had similar experiences growing up. Her family, too, had been terrorized by Red Guards. She loved school and dreamed of going to college someday. But her assignment to this remote region convinced her that those dreams would never come true. I told her about my life. I told her about Yiping and my mixed feelings, love of him and fear for the consequences. She suggested I write to him and explain everything. I tried to write to him many evenings, but I ended up crying so hard I could never finish. I waited instead for a letter from him. None arrived. When I found I could not put my feelings into words, I thought about walking to his school to talk with him about our relationship and our future. Yet I was afraid to be so bold, fearing I'd get into trouble or be embarrassed or rejected. I waited and hoped. I tried to clear my mind. I began taking walks up the mountainside by myself, always carrying a stick to scare away the snakes. It was peaceful. Tall bamboo and trees surrounded me, lush and green and shimmering with life. The clouds floated low overhead, and mist filled the valleys below. I found a solitary spot at the edge of a steep rocky height. I sat there, dangling my feet over the edge, staring down into the valley, and nursed my broken heart. He is my true love, I thought. I will never love another. He is the love of my life. I wept. The first and the last. I didn't know what to do. As days turned into weeks, my thoughts changed. They became darker. I began thinking about stepping off the cliff, plummeting down through the clouds to the rocks below. My life was so miserable. My heart ached so much. Why not just end it? A single step, a single act of will was all it took. And then I'd free myself from this turmoil and find peace of mind. Later one afternoon, I stood at the very edge of the precipice and stared down at the mist and the green and gray world far below. I closed my eyes and gathered my courage and was about to take the final step when a voice cried out behind me, "Imo, stop!" I opened my eyes and stepped back. Dongmei ran to me. "Don't!" she cried. She took my hands in hers and held them tightly. "Life is hard, but we have to live it," she said. "We have to. Our fate is better than this. Our lives are going to be better than this. I do not know when or how, but everything will change. This is not the end. No, no, it won't change, I cried. Oh, it will. Believe me, I've felt it. I've sat on this very spot too, and looked down into the dark valley. I know what you were thinking. I hate my life, I sobbed. I'm tired. I don't want it anymore. That night, we cried in each other's arms and slept in the same bed. I decided not to tempt myself again and didn't go back to the cliff. Time passed slowly. We taught and talked and sang. We tried to cheer each other up. Yet I remained depressed. Soon my mood began affecting Dongmei rather than the other way around. Her optimism and confidence slowly eroded. My darkness was seeping into her soul. She became quiet. She sat alone outside in the dark. We went through the motion of teaching. The children provided a much-needed diversion during the day. We spoke to each other less in our quarters at night. Slowly, along with me, Dongmei lost hope. We're going to grow old and die here, she said to me one evening as we sat on the log bridge and looked down into the river. I was thinking the same thing. There is a way, though. If we were party members, we would have a better chance of going home. Party members have priority. How could we become party members? I asked, with my background and yours. It's impossible. Well, it's not impossible, she said. We might try. It's better than rotting here, isn't it? It is, I agreed. There are two ways for people with a bad family background to become party members, she explained. One of them is the basket party member. That means we bring baskets full of presents to the party secretary, and after he gets enough presents, he will recommend party membership for us and fix records. Basically, we buy it. We don't have much to give as presents, I said. We don't have any money. You're right, she said and laughed. But there is another way. She hesitated and studied my face before continuing. It's called loose belt party member. What? Loose belt party member? What is that? that means you sleep with the party secretary. I what? I asked. I wasn't quite sure what she was talking about. You don't know? I don't think so. You take off your clothes. You get into his bed. You do what he likes. And before long, you're a Communist Party member. Then you may make it out of here. I was shocked. I could never do that, Dongmei, I said. Could you? I would do anything. Just look around us, Yimao. Really, now, wouldn't you? When you've been here as long as me, she said, you'll feel the same way. Just wait. A week later, she visited the party secretary. He lived in the village about 30 minutes down the mountain. She told me she intended to fill out an application to become a party member. She washed, borrowed my white flowered blouse, looked at herself in the mirror, pinched her cheeks to make them red, and left. I lay awake and waited for her. As the night passed, I began to worry. I walked to the bridge to see if she might have fallen. I could not see in the darkness. Just before dawn, she returned. She was crying. Are you okay? I asked. What happened? She said she didn't want to talk. She crawled into her bed. The next night, she returned to the party secretary, and the next. Each time, she returned home crying. On the fourth night, she went to see him again, but returned home in less than 2 hours. This time, she was fuming. What's wrong? I asked. That bastard, she said, that filthy bastard. He wouldn't see me tonight to consider my application. Why not? I asked. Because he was with another girl from another village, and he said my application had been denied. I am sorry, I said. That liar, she said. I hope he gets bitten by a snake. I hope a tiger eats him. I hope he falls off a bridge. I hope a rock falls on his head. I hope someone cuts him up. What will you do now? I asked. I don't know. She said, there's nothing more to do. It's hopeless. It's even worse than hopeless. End of chapter 53.